Now we will discuss our second part of this project scope management. In project scope management, the requirements backbone for planning scope and defining scope and further decomposing the scope in activities or work packages. So there are many type of requirements which we need to collect during this process. So collect requirement is the process of determining, documenting and managing stakeholder needs and requirements to meet our project objectives. The key benefit is that it defines the product scope, also the project scope. There can be several types of requirements, including business requirement, that are the high-level needs of organization as a whole, stakeholder requirements, describe the needs of stakeholder or stakeholder groups, solution requirements, that is describe the features, function, and characteristics of the product, service, or result, how it will look like. There can be some data requirements, how data can be present and represent, trainings, and many things. There may be some project requirements that describe the actions, processes, and other conditions that project need to meet, like dates, obligations, assumptions, constraints, and many things. There can be also quality requirements, what type of test we will do in this project, certifications or validations. So you can see here in the PMBOK guide 6th edition, this figure number 5-4, collect requirements. You can see the inputs. There are many inputs, tools and technique and outputs. In inputs, you can see the project charter, because in project charter, we have high level requirements in the project charter. And you can see the big umbrella of project management plan. We have 3 inputs from there. Scope management plan, requirement management plan are the output of our first planning process is 5.1 scope management plan. That will be input for this collect requirement. There is one new input. This is a stakeholder engagement plan. Stakeholder engagement plan is used to understand the stakeholder communication requirements and the level of stakeholder engagement in order to achieve the very good communication from the project. There are some documents also are the inputs: assumption logs, lesson learned register, stakeholder register. Assumption log have assumptions that already describe for the some project, this project, and lesson learned register are the lesson learned from the previous project. Some requirements can be taken from lesson learned register, like weather conditions or some disaster or any collapse in the schedule management system like this. We can take some requirements from a stakeholder register. And you can see here, input number 4 is business. From business documents, there is business case. Because business case can influence the collect requirement process. What are the required, what are the desired, what are the optional criteria, like this. Then number 5, we have agreements. There will be many agreements that will give us many information for preparing the scope. So these all requirements is basically for preparing the scope, and scope is complete project divided. And as you know, this enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets, there will be input to this collect requirements. You know, there are many environmental enterprises, environmental factors that can affect your requirements, like organization culture, infrastructure, marketplace conditions. And in OPA, as you know, there are many policies and procedure from company and your organization, so you have to follow. In tools and technique, number 1, you can see the expert judgment. So you need some expert. It can be an individual or group or consultant like this, like business analyst, requirement analyst, some requirements documentation, conflict management, some your director or manager that has the expertise in some project. After this, you have some techniques for data gathering, how to gather the data. So there are some techniques we will see later. Then we have data analysis, how we will make analysis. Then we have decision making. In decision making, we have several criteria for decision, data representation, how we will represent the data, interpersonal and team skills, how we will make further facilitation in our decisions, context diagram, prototyping. There are 2 outputs, requirements document and requirement traceability matrix. You can see the project documents I already discussed, the assumption log, lesson learned register and stakeholder register that will provide some detail for collect requirement. In data gathering, you can see the brainstorming. Brainstorming is a technique used to generate and collect multiple ideas related to any project. This is a very good technique to collect the different ideas. You can make interview. You can make interview formal or informal with the stakeholder directly or indirectly, so you can have some information regarding your project. You can make some focus groups. Focus group bring together pre-qualified stakeholders, subject matter experts. So focus group you can say like agenda meetings. There will be a trend moderator who will guide this group and make this agenda. You can prepare questionnaires and survey for large number of your inquiries. You can take from these surveys. You can give these surveys to stakeholders, consumer, like this. You can make many things. You can collect the geographical data, statistical data, and further you can analyze. You can make benchmarking. Benchmarking is basically the comparing you are comparing your something that is previously exist. Like you are comparing your standard with some other standards. You are comparing your ideas with already some approved and good ideas. So any actual and planned product you are comparing always. This benchmarking is also very good tool and technique to collect data. We have some decision making technique. The number 1 is voting. Voting, you can see, is a collective decision making technique and an assessment process having multiple alternatives. You have different alternatives and you are making voting. There are three types of voting. Anonymity is mean 100% all stakeholders agree on single action. Majority, that support more than 50% of the member of the group agree, then it's called majority decision. Majority, the decision you have largest block of your group agree, even if a majority is not achieved, like elections. When you are going for election, political election, so how you select some political organization in election voting system, you select the largest part who win the election, largest voting. So this is a priority. Then you have in the same voting, you have autocratic decision making. Means somebody have a responsibility to your director or subject matter expert. You give him power and he make action, decision for the group. You have a multi-criteria decision analysis. In this analysis, you have several options and you evaluate all options with different criteria like risk, uncertainty, valuation, some statistical data. You are comparing and then making some decision. For data, then you have a data representation. Here you are using two techniques, affinity diagrams and mind mapping. Affinity diagram is a classification of ideas. Affinity means effective, attractive, and you have different ideas with some affinity. You classified in different groups and then you review. In mind mapping, you have one centralized idea, then you generate different idea and you map further ideas and link together. You can see this library project requirement, simple affinity diagram. You have book storage, computer, office space, customer services. Then you have different blocks, affinity blocks with this different type of data representation. So this is one example of affinity diagram. You have classification of idea, some similar ideas. This is an example of mind mapping for a child care center. So first, the central idea in the middle, then you develop the secondary ideas, then you develop further ideas and you map through some lines. This method is called mind mapping data representation technique. Then you have some interpersonal team skills. This nominal group technique is basically the extension of brainstorming, which we already discussed. But here we rank the ideas on different criteria. We make ranking of ideas and we select the best idea. This is called the nominal group technique. Then you have another technique, observation. This is normal. You make some observation and you select some data. You have different facilitation meetings, bring together all stakeholder and you make some some interfaces like this. You can increase the stakeholder on which part they are agree. So this technique is called facilitation. There are some type you have to remember for your exam. Joint application design development is used in software development industry. Quality function deployment is used in manufacturing industry. Some user stories we use in Agile or Agile project management, or you can use also here some user stories. Then you have another tool and technique, this context diagram. Context diagram is an example of a scope model. You make a model and you make some blocks to represent some inputs to the business and some outputs. It is like black box analysis. There are some analysis, one called white box analysis and some black box analysis. White box analysis, you can look inside, you make testing, part by part testing, and some black box analysis. You are sitting outside, you are considering whole product. So this context diagram is black box analysis. The last technique used in this collect requirements, you have prototyping. You make some prototype, you generate some 3D or 2D models. Like when you are purchasing some flat, you go to the site, so this contractor or the builder will show you some prototype of their flat, how it will be look like, and you look around and you see the benefits and you generate different things. So this prototyping is also used. You make dummy models. There are two output in this phase. Collect requirements, the requirement documentation RD and requirement traceability matrix RTM. Requirement documentation describe how individual requirement meet the business needs of the project requirement. It can be high level and detailed requirement. And this requirement document will include all business requirements, stakeholder requirements, solution requirements, transition requirements, project requirements, and quality requirements. You can see here business requirements, stakeholder requirements, solution requirements, functional, non-functional, transition, project, and quality requirements will be included in this document as the output of collect requirement process. There is another process which will be output, this requirement traceability matrix. This requirement traceability matrix is like a grid, like this grid, that links product requirement from their origin to the deliverables, So this implementation of this requirement traceability matrix will help and ensure that each requirement add business value by linking it to business and project objective. Also, you can trace all requirements, and further this RTM can be used for resource management and other documents. So these are the two main output. You can see the collect requirement process for this plan scope management is very important process, because here you will collect all requirements by using different tools and techniques. There are many tools and techniques you have to remember. And after that, these collect requirements will be used in defining scope and also will be used in WBS. So this will provide the best for your project management plan. Thank you very much.